Well, fresh off a visit with the Pope, the governor joins us for the full hour to talk about a number of issues facing the state. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suchi and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Aloha and welcome to Spotlight Now here on Hawaii News Now. Remember that we're always looking for your questions and comments for our guests. Make sure to log on to Facebook and send them in there. Our guest for the full hour today, Governor Josh Green. Ryan is in Vegas today. They're opening the third Zippies there, and so he is on assignment. But we must soldier on.
Yes, well, he could have gone to Zippies here and then joined us, but that's okay. I'm happy they have more Zippies in Vegas.
Nice for the folks who are on the Ninth Island to have a taste of home. Welcome back, fresh off your trip to the Vatican. Tell us, let's start off, how was the Pope?
Pope was very great. He's a generous person. Jamie and I had just the honor of a lifetime to go and meet him. Pope Leo is from Chicago. He's a White Sox fan, which means he's into suffering, and he is just very thoughtful. So we were invited to go and have an audience with him, had a short conversations about so many things. But I will tell you that also I was leading a large delegation of about 20 people with CSG, which is the Council of State Governments. So seeing the Pope was definitely the pinnacle of the experience. But we also saw like the Minister of Tourism from Italy, and I was able to talk to one of the heads of NATO and give them an update on where we were coming from in the Indo-Pacific. But then, of course, being with the Pope, we were front and center. First, in his sermon, I should share something special was said. He talked about asking, first telling people of the world to ask for help because they're going through tough times, and we should offer help when we're able to. And I really appreciated that homily or that sermon that he gave. And then when I was able to speak with him and shared, that my background is as a physician, but I'm a governor in Hawaii, we want to be helpful, and we want to help him work on initiatives that involve peace. We want to help him work on initiatives where people have been traumatized. So that was extraordinary. He seemed receptive, and then Jamie and I invited him to come to Kalupapa and, of course, to Oahu, where he would, I'm assuming, have very significant services. I think it's very possible. We'll see. So either when he's in Australia, we'd hope to get him to come to Hawaii, or when he's doing his North American tour in 2027, perhaps then he would come. But I think because we have two saints that came from Kalupapa, it's a very holy place. There are 6 survivors still with leprosy or Hansen's disease, and they are very old. I think that there's a reason to come and see that sacred place before they pass. So it was just really an honor to represent Hawaii and to see the Pope, even though I'm half Jewish, Jamie's Mormon, but there we were with the Catholic Pope, and he embraced us.
Wonderful. Must have been just a very exciting thing to experience. I want to ask you, there's a number of things happening in our state, and I just wanted to tick through some of them. First off, and if we could just talk about, some current events. First off, the Kamehameha Schools lawsuit. This is someone who is from Virginia who is basically fishing for a plaintiff to sue Kamehameha Schools. What's your reaction to this happening, and what are you hoping to see from this?
It's disappointing. I don't like that kind of negativity, and I don't like outsiders meddling in our business when we clearly have a private school that is privately funded and is valuable to us and to the Hawaiian people. Now, I can tell you that I have connections that run deep over to the U.S. Attorney General, and I've already expressed, my position with them that being Hawaiian should not be viewed as a special target in the federal government. I work very closely with some attorneys that are Republican and have worked with the administration in their first term, and they also have a very good relationship with the Attorney General, with U.S. Attorney General Bondi. So I've already kind of laid out our position, which is this should be not a place that they intervene. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We have other programs like the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, for example, where we have a commitment. There is federal legislation that protects land and housing rights for some that had lost them as a result of the relationship we have with the United States before statehood. So there's just so many reasons that they shouldn't go there. Also, there are other considerations. For example, just the Hawaiian community in general represents part of our diversity, yes, but so does our Japanese and Caucasian and Filipino community, all of us are minorities. So this is not the right place to fish.
This is an individual, though, who has been successful in the past in suing large institutions. I mean, how seriously do you think that we should take this lawsuit?
Well, we always have to prepare. I've talked to our Attorney General to be prepared to take a position for us. My position, now you hear, is very clear. I don't think that we're demonstrating any inappropriate favoritism. This is a strong institution that is a private school, basically, and needs to be able to function because it has actually a lot to offer to the state of Hawaii. Needless to say, KS, or historically Bishop, they do a lot of land work here. We're in partnership with them on many levels, and I think harming them harms the state of Hawaii, and I would make that case too. But I do have some legal inroads to make our case long before any fishing expedition lands a blow to our state. There is such negativity out there in the world. I think people should focus on the positives instead, and what Kamehameha Schools is able to do for individuals that are Hawaiian and who need some support. Remember, we have much higher rates of homelessness amongst the Hawaiian community. We have much higher rates of poverty and incarceration amongst the Hawaiian community, and KS is able to improve those matters. So why would we want someone trying to damage KS? Obviously, it would have to be someone from the mainland who has their own political agenda.
Okay, let's talk about an incident. This happened just yesterday. I know that you vetoed e-bike legislation because of basically the language was too broad, is what you said, and that it then encompassed electric vehicles as well. But just yesterday, 2 boys, 5 and 16, rushed to the hospital. A vehicle hit them near Farrington. They were on the same e-bike. Neither was wearing a helmet. The little boy was taken to the hospital in stable condition. The older 16-year-old in serious condition. It just seems like on a regular basis now we're seeing more and more of these e-bike incidents. I know that this is something that you had championed during the session. Is this something that you hope to sign before the next session is POW?
Yeah, within about a week we'll have an executive order to do some of the things that the legislation had proposed. Just to be totally clear, and I'm not being judgmental here, unfortunately that bill had a beyond fatal flaw, which is it would have prevented electric vehicles from being able to be on the roads. It had an actual technical flaw, and we would have had to suspend all electric cars from being able to be on the roads. And it was an accident. It was just a legislative mistake. So we couldn't sign that kind of mistaken legislation into law. And if they give me a piece of legislation in the first day or week of the new session, of course I'll sign it. But yes, we're going to have an EO, executive order, which codifies a lot of those, ideas that they had in the bill, setting aside the error straight away. Now let's talk about the fatalities on the road, because it's really terrible. This year our fatalities are up significantly on the road, and I do agree that it's because of people being on electric vehicles, not being safe enough, so on. We have a lot of people who've been dying on motorcycles this year. We've had 12 additional deaths as compared to last year. We're plus 12, which is the worst kind of plus to be for people dying on motorcycles. And almost always it's because people are not wearing a helmet. So that's why they're dying when they're in a car versus motorcycle accident. If people don't have a helmet on, or if they just crash into a pole without a helmet on, the likelihood of dying is really high. Same thing goes for seatbelts. Most of our fatalities that are in cars are a result of people not wearing seatbelts. I did a little research this morning with our Director of Transportation, Ed Sniffen, who is excellent. He shared with me that 93% of all of our fatalities, traffic fatalities, are preventable if we are not distracted drivers, or we're wearing our seatbelts, or we're wearing a helmet if we're on some kind of motorcycle or electric vehicle. Straight away. So it's within our control as people, as a community, to decrease these deaths, these tragic losses by 93%. The other 7% are just pure accidents. There's oil on the road, a car spins out of control, a terrible storm occurs and people can't see and they crash, that kind of thing. That combined with drunk driving is within our control. But in the executive order, I will, make clear what people have to do if they're on these electric vehicles, how law enforcement can be supported, and if people are doing wheelies on electric vehicles or going too fast, we will, cite people more. There'll be a lot more citations, and that can help. But in truth, mostly this is within our own control, and that's where we need, we just need people to make the right decision. So please, everyone, if you've got an electric vehicle, if you've got an electric scooter or a moped or a motorcycle, especially if you have one of your young people on it, make them wear a helmet. And finally, everyone, please wear your seatbelt.
Well, those folks under 18 are required to wear a helmet if they're on a motorcycle, but people over 18 are not. Do you think it's time for Hawaii to have a helmet law?
We should have one. There's no question. I used to submit that legislation routinely. It ends up dying usually in the transportation committees. I don't know if the transportation chairs of this generation would be more open to it. It would be great if they would, because I had my bills killed repeatedly at the transportation chair level. And it was always frustrating because I know people like the sense of freedom, wearing no helmet when they're 55 years old or 60 years old and they're driving fast on a motorcycle. But two things they should be aware of. One, they will die and leave their kids behind without dad or mom. And two, if they have a head trauma, they're probably going to have longstanding disability from the traumatic head injury, traumatic brain injury, and they're going to require, the average is over $3 million per person after a traumatic brain injury, of state resources that we all end up paying for when they're living in, kind of assisted living or long-term supportive care. And that's not fair to society either. So I don't think it's too much to ask that people wear helmets. I would just say it's one of those things. We have to evolve a little bit. You can wear a modest helmet. It doesn't have to be something that, totally changes the experience, but prevent that kind of traumatic head injury. This is the ER doc talking, not just a regular governor. Okay.
Let's stick with the doctor and you and talk about what's happening nationwide with the conversation about vaccinations. You, along with 4 other governors, signed this West Coast Health Alliance to basically form your own consortium, your own public policy around vaccines. Tell us sort of in this moment what you're thinking about what the federal government is doing when it comes to vaccines and what the hope is for that alliance.
Sure. We are intending to be a science-based health alliance, not political, just science-based. And I'm going to welcome other governors if they'd like to come. I'm currently the national co-chair of the National Governors Association Health Committee, and I've been doing that for a couple years. It makes a lot of sense that we have science-based recommendations. Let's go back a half step. The current Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mr. Kennedy, is destroying our national vaccination program. It's not personal between me and him. He has probably a lot to offer in chronic disease management or pesticide work, things I agree on with him, but he's destroying our confidence in vaccinations. And that is going to hurt us. 80% plus of Americans support vaccinations, and people still have choice for the most part if they just don't want to get them. They can get religious exemptions. They can simply choose as adults not to get certain vaccinations. But he has undermined people's confidence, and therefore we had to come together so that we can give best practices recommendations. I have our Director of Health as a central figure in this alliance of our 4 states. I'm also directly involved. I'm going to continue to ask other experts, some of whom were recently kicked out of the federal committees by Secretary Kennedy, to give us, again, best practices. Best practices, mind you, that have been around for a long time under both Republican and Democratic administrations. We just can't go down this road of destroying our public health apparatus to prevent disease. And you can see what's happening. Other states are going the opposite direction. Like Florida. Florida has a Surgeon General that is anti-vax, anti-mask, doesn't even believe in social distancing. It's madness, okay? It's madness. And it's not even sensible advice, of course, not for the individuals that could catch disease, but also for the people that are around them, their parents, their grandparents. So that's just kind of disruptive behavior, but it's been essentially given a green light by Mr. Kennedy, because he's saying, hey, it's personal freedom. You don't have to, you don't have to adhere to any rules. So you're getting breakaway states. So we decided to come together and offer real science. And I tell you, I think it's going to save lives.
The thing about vaccines, as we all know, is that they only work if enough people take them. So what are your concerns in terms of the uptake? Even if you have this alliance, folks may not have access, may think that their insurance won't cover. We do know that the Hawaii insurers have said that they will cover the cost.
Yes.
But there is confusion as to what's available, what's not, and supply.
Yes. So let me just say this. We, like you said, in Hawaii are going to cover vaccinations. We're going to cover COVID vaccinations. We are adequately stockpiling right now so pediatric clinics can continue to do it. And even if we have to use what will amount to probably about $15 million to guarantee everyone can still have access to healthcare vaccinations, we'll do it for the good of all, for the good of our state, for the good of our hospital system, to prevent extra cost. So we're doing it. You're right, though. If you go under 95%, you have some risk. If you go under 90%, you have huge risk for outbreaks, especially in kindergarten classes. So what will happen in those areas is there will be outbreaks. We could get them in our state when people visit. Now, the individuals who are vaccinated are going to be safe. They're going to be fine for the most part. However, there are going to be a lot of outliers. There are going to be people that are on chemotherapy that can't get vaccinated, or their vaccinations don't even hold because their immune system is not creating a response. There are going to be some children that are not old enough yet to be vaccinated, and they're going to catch measles or mumps or rubella. And I'll tell you this, when you start seeing cases of polio, mothers across America are going to rise up, and they are going to want Mr. Kennedy's head, because polio is something that will affect the lifetime of a person. There is no cure once you've had the polio virus in your system. You'll have paralysis, could be catastrophic. You'll also have post-polio syndrome, which means weakness in many different parts of your body from neurologic damage. So when those kind of realities come home to roost, then there will be incredible blame placed, of course, at the feet of Mr. Kennedy, but also at the president's feet. And I am conveying directly to the president through interviews and through conversations with his cabinet and others that are around him, please move Mr. Kennedy into a place that he can help on other public health matters that Americans agree on, like chronic disease and processed foods, but far away from this piece of healthcare. But you're going to see outbreaks. And the irony is you're going to see more outbreaks in states that are traditionally more rural, poor, and conservative. The president's very base. So he will lose patience. And already, and I was just on the phone with one of the U.S. senators who was sharing with me what their experience was in that hearing. This is just right before we came on air. And we were talking about how there's 3 Republican senators, 2 of whom are physicians, who have had it with what's going on at the CDC. They want Kennedy out of there. And before long, they're going to stop funding a lot of the operations that he would like to do because they don't want to deal with him. So you will quickly see a lot of mounting pressure. And Mr. Kennedy, if he's smart, will move on to an area where he can actually help. I would recommend that the president put someone like Dr. Oz or Dr. Jerome Adams, people who admittedly are a lot more conservative than me, but are science-based people. They're physicians. They're good human beings. They would run that department properly.
Well, I want to key into one thing that you said, and that was that we welcome a lot of visitors to our shores, right? So we're a state of 1.4 million. In any given time, we're welcoming 9 to 10 million people into our state who may come from a place where vaccinations are not a priority. So, you can do all the lift for Hawaii that you want, but if the rest, if all of those visitors are not also, and I'm not saying that all 9 million won't, but we are in a unique position given our vulnerability because we are so porous at letting everybody in.
Right. So all I can do is I can provide the vaccinations and the good public health advice for those who will accept it and who are citizens. So I can get us to a place where we have herd immunity by making sure that vaccinations are available, they're covered by insurance, that they are a part of our healthcare community. And that will protect us for the most part. You're right. I will never be able to guarantee that someone else from another state is not infectious. But I will keep our healthcare apparatus intact also, so that if someone comes through and we find out, let's say they've got a very bad case of COVID or a bad case of measles, we will have enough, hopefully, because I'll keep funding it, resource to do contact tracing of where those individuals went. We'll be able to see who they were in contact with, whether they were in a school district or a part of our school area, one of our communities where there were extra kids that were not vaccinated. There will be a lot of ways for us to do good public health, but that's what the social bond is about between human beings. If someone from another state is traveling with a fever, with a rash, that's not vaccinated, and they obviously have the measles, then they have violated the bond and the trust that we have as human beings with one another. They shouldn't be doing it. They should be staying home. They should be isolating. Of course, I believe they should be getting vaccinated also, but I believe people should make choices with their own bodies. I always have had that position. I just think that categorically walking away from responsibility, which is what Kennedy does, and demonizing vaccinations is a terrible mistake. It will bring down different parts of our society. And it's not just the health, it's also the healthcare system. Then you'll have people overrunning hospitals like we had with COVID. You couldn't get access to cardiac care during COVID because the intensive care units were so full with individuals on ventilators with COVID. And people died because of that. So there's a lot of consequences, which unfortunately Mr. Kennedy doesn't understand. And we're going to see them in some parts of the country. We should be able to keep ourselves pretty safe and protected. And this alliance with the other states is a very good start. It also will likely become the standard if we have a divided nation on health policy.
I want to stick with federal policy. Last week, we had the opportunity to talk to some folks in the nonprofit space about cuts that are happening at the federal level. We know that, Trump passed his mega bill, and there are a lot of cuts that are sort of coming after the midterms. But there are already things that are happening. One specific thing, the Native Hawaiian Education Act, which we were told went from $45 million down to zero. Now, this is not a done deal yet, right? Congress still has to, and this is something, just for the viewers' knowledge, this is something that Congress funds year over year, and this primarily goes to helping, obviously, as it says, Native Hawaiian education. Partners in Development Foundation, which is an amazing resource, Tutu and Me. They run a bunch of programs, including for homeless preschools, preschools for homeless families. They are looking at, if this is zeroed out, really a decimation of their programs. What are your concerns? And do you think that this is going to happen, this $45 million to zero?
It's hard for me to predict how loathsome the U.S. Congress will be on some of these programs. I do think there will be a lot of compromises, and we have a very good congressional delegation, all four of them. So they'll be fighting alongside a lot of other people to keep funds in place. I'll be available to help support some programs. I mean, my children went to Tutu and Me, both of them. So I know the value personally. I would say this, that we can accommodate some appropriations from the state side, but not all. We can try to hold the ship together for probably 2 to 3 years. We do have rainy day funds, which I'm preparing to use in case there are deep Medicaid cuts or SNAP cuts, food stamp cuts. But those are big chunks of money that help everyone. As soon as they start singling out individual programs, it gets very difficult. We do have $50 million currently already set aside, and the ledge set aside an additional $200 million of safety monies, which we didn't have to take advantage of because I was able to, with other people, put off a few years. I'm also working very closely on new monies, and we can talk about that perhaps in subsequent questions. But the truth is, it is pretty awful to see Hawaiian programs get targeted. And put it this way, if that program cut does go through, I think that we will probably litigate. And we will do what we can to stop them from, making those cuts that are targeting certain peoples. Now, also, everyone should realize that this isn't forever. We're going to be dealing with some interesting things come September 30th. That's whether or not they're going to pass a new budget. And that will be very meaningful. And there'll probably be a continuing resolution, usually that gets us through some of these patches. But I know that's a lot of chatter about how you sustain programs. We are going to do all that we can to keep the entire safety net intact. I will tell people also, we did lapse hundreds of millions of dollars, which have been appropriate, but we just can't spend in some cases on some programs, and that gives me an additional cushion. I need the economy to stay strong, and that is super duper important, which is why you're going to see us work continuously to make sure tourism is intact, that we cut a good deal. We'll talk about this, I'm sure, with the military to bring extra resources if we're going to go forward with the leases or land swap. All of these things are in play. I am working hard to maintain a very workable, constructive relationship at the federal level for the good of our people.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk about military land leases on the other side. You're watching Spotlight Now. And welcome back to Spotlight Now here on Hawaii News Now. We are continuing in with our conversation with Governor Josh Green and looking at the comments. Tony Joe Gobbin writing, no lease renewal, no land swap. So where are we? You launched Engage Hawaii to get more public input. What kind of input have you been getting, and where are we in this negotiation?
So we're getting very positive impact and good input, and we're getting kind of impactful statements from people. So let me address that comment specifically with respect. Just so everyone knows, if we do nothing and if we were to take the position where we're just not going to renew the leases, we're not going to do a land swap at all, what will happen is the federal government will eminent domain the land and we will get nothing. We will not have any consideration of our environment. We will not have a decreased footprint, which we are right now arguing for, a significantly decreased footprint of the military activities. We would not have any control over where the bombings occur. We would not have a benefits package, which would help the Hawaiian community with land use. We would not have extra resources to clean up Makua Valley. We would not get Makua Valley. We wouldn't get resources to help with energy. We would lose out completely because they would simply take it. And I don't think that that's what that individual wants. And they do, unfortunately, have the legal right to eminent domain properties if they choose to for national security purposes. And truth be told, our bases are very important to our national security because training occurs there, which is very relevant for our military. So it's my responsibility to be thoughtful about how we go forward with either a lease or a land swap. It's my responsibility as governor to make sure that we are not taken advantage of, that resources do go to the very people that are impacted. It's also my responsibility for us to be pragmatic about things. I think that people need to know that $10 billion of resources come as a part of our relationship with the military every year. That's 9.8% of our GDP. Can you imagine wiping out essentially 10% of all the economic activity that our people have? You'd see mass unemployment. You'd see, serious challenges funding things like hospitals without revenue or schools. So we have to find the right balance, and that's what my approach will be. I do have a very open line of communication with the Secretary of the Army and the key principals. I'm working on bringing a lot of extra resources to the state, at the same time heeding what people's premise is, which is there should be not as much land used by the military, that it should be less impactful, and that it shouldn't affect our environment. It is interesting to me when some people, especially those in politics, come out and just say, slam the door, the military has to go. Well, that won't happen, because even if all the politicians and all of the public sentiment in Hawaii was against the military being here, which it's not, but even if that was the case, they would still need to have some kind of presence here because of the training needs that we have. So, I'm always interested, particularly if people pass resolutions or whatever, that don't also offer me a counter solution. Like, okay, don't do the leases, don't do a land swap, but is there another corollary? Like, but we instead will supplant the economy with this, approach, or that we will provide for security through Guam, or that we will make sure that we get our additional support for dealing with natural disasters from another entity. None of that comes. They just send me a text that says, don't do it. So I will do what I can to get a very sensible deal in place that is favorable to Hawaii, that is environmentally thoughtful.
Well, to that end, the Hawaii County Council just called for an end to bombing at Pohakuloa. Where do you stand on that? Actually,
I took action on that when I was a state senator, and I had colonels come in, and we adjusted the bombing routes. I don't think that those guys are even aware of that. I'll share that with them now. So we were able to adjust bombing routes over the years so that when they drop what are dummy bombs, okay, they're not active explosives, that they were out of the areas that were more sensitive, where there had been these depleted uranium shells. I understand, and I understand what people want to see, which is a much safer process, and that is something that I totally support. And we can have that constructive conversation and adjust the military ranges, again, shrinking their footprint, making sure that it's further away from our populations when possible. But that kind of resolution doesn't offer me anything that's constructive that I could do. The idea that I think was coming out of there is shut down PTA. That can't happen because, again, even if we took the position as a state that we simply were not going to renew the leases and we were not going to do a land swap, they would eminent domain the property, and then people would be on the other side of that very unpleasant situation, which is that we lost all of our opportunity to negotiate and we didn't get anything out of it. We do stand to do well in this process, but I'm glad that we're getting input from people. I hope that people will give me constructive ideas. Right now, I'll tell you where we are, okay? I'm asking for several $billion in additional support for transportation, which will increase our security. I'm asking for the return of Makua Valley with monies to basically remediate any of the damage that's gone on there for generations. I'm going to insist that those dollars go in large part to Native Hawaiian organizations that are able to do that work because it's a sacred place. I'm going to ask for some support for energy projects for geothermal. And also I'm going to ask the Army build up to 5,000 houses for those who are serving in Hawaii, so it takes some of the pressure off of our own housing inventory. Now, see all those things I just asked for, and also shrinking the footprint and having lands returned to the state of Hawaii. We could have that scenario, or we could just dig in and get grumpy about it and give them the middle finger and then have them take our lands and we get nothing. So that is kind of where our options are, but we're being firm in our position, and we are also going to be very mindful about the environment.
Well, how do you have any leverage if the person that is across the table can just say, you know what, forget it, you get none of that?
Because I'm a reasonable human being, and I do tell them that it's important to have a positive relationship with the state of Hawaii. We want, if they were going to say eminent domain the land, it would create great conflict, and it would make it more difficult for the military to train here. It would make it more difficult for individuals who are in our grocery stores who are here for 3 years on assignment. It would make it more difficult for people to have what is a sense of ohana with us, and they are aware of that. And they took to heart when I had those meetings with their leadership that that's where we had to be. At the end of the day, just so everyone knows, the federal government has much more power than any individual state. And in this current era, we're aware that they're willing to go to great lengths to exercise their federal powers. I'm doing what I can to mitigate some of the problems that the other states are having. For example, I'm working very hard to have enough of a strong and positive working relationship, enough that they don't threaten to use our National Guard elsewhere, that they don't threaten to use military in our state on immigration issues with ICE. So far, so good. I was able to negotiate them moving away from taking $600 million from the university over anti-Semitism claims, because actually it was not about anti-Semitism, it was about colonialism, and I had to explain it. If I was just a hothead and just wrote raging emails, which is what you see a lot on the internet, we would lose all those battles. We would have lost our $600 million. They would have kept the references to our heroes, our Japanese heroes in World War II, out of the historical record. They would have slashed all of our healthcare resources. So there are ways to deal with the administration that can be constructive while still sticking with our own values. And our values include protecting the environment, protecting our land, and government is often about compromise, as difficult as it is. But that is unfortunate. It's unfortunate when I simply receive resolutions that don't offer any additional constructive ideas, because I'm going to have to take constructive ideas or else we will suffer the consequences. We don't want to be that state that's in the line of fire from the federal government, because just so everyone knows, we don't have the same kind of budget like the Attorney General's office has in New York or California. We have very great attorney general and deputies, but we don't have dozens and dozens of lawyers to fight if they decided to go after our Hawaiian programs, if they decided to go after our lands. We would not be able to fight them off nearly as well as many other states who could litigate with hundreds of millions of dollars.
You're playing offense and defense, it sounds like. There's a question here from Lane Popochu who says, where are we currently with the negotiations? And as a follow-up, and you did mention this briefly, but will it be possible to clean up unexploded ordnance at Makua? In terms of the timeline, the first half of that question, 2029, I believe, is when these are actually coming up, but you're hoping to sign something well before then.
Well, look, I was hoping to have a regular process that went, 27, 28, and do this negotiation in a sensible way with the environmental impact studies. But because the federal government decided that they wanted to move this much more aggressively and did, decide to leverage us if we don't participate with the potential for eminent domain, I had no choice but to accept the fact that they want to move the calendar up. So where are we right now? They've sent us a demand letter. We will, sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, give them a full response with an early draft based on some of the input we're getting. I insisted that we be able to get, 4 to 6 weeks of input from our community on what we would like most out of this negotiation, or this, I guess, reconciliation of the land. And so we're getting that input. I've got a Tiger team on it, which consists of top attorneys, my land guys, Scott Glenn, my chief of staff. I'm involved. Our attorney general's involved. So we have, very strong people on it. I'm maintaining a positive working relationship with people that are at the deputy secretary level and lower, because I think it's better for us to work through channels. And we will give them a counter proposal, and then we will debate it and discuss it. But I do want to get ordinances cleaned up. I do want our university to be able to do it, which will augment our university resources and create jobs and help with our graduate students and help with our environmental work. I want us to be able to fund some of our really significant projects. I may be able to actually get some leverage on the federal negotiators. I've asked for things like consideration of letting us have the federal detention center starting in 2029, which would mean I wouldn't have to build a gigantic new prison, because there's 900 extra beds there. It could help us a lot. So this is just a part of the job. And what I can tell you is it's highly likely that if a land swap ends up being done, then they will have a lot less land that they're occupying, that we will get a very significant amount of resources, and it will be able to help us solve some of our large problems, like the cost of transportation and housing. It's an opportunity for us to do well, as long as we stick to our values, which is protecting the environment and being mindful of its impact on people. But I will tell everybody, just as a direct person, you guys know me to be pretty direct, they will screw us over if we just don't engage. They will simply take action at some point, and we will lose completely. And then we'll all be sitting around wondering, why on earth did we get nothing? Why didn't we protect some extra lands? Why didn't we get the munitions cleaned up at Makua? Why didn't we get extra housing? It would be because we were unfortunately unwilling to do the work. Doing the work, even when it's unpleasant, and sometimes it's unpleasant these days, is necessary.
Okay. Another thing I know you're working on very closely is the spending of the green fee, right? So January 1, we start collecting this added tourism tax, for lack of a better word. And, the paper had the Star Advertiser had an interesting article saying, we've talked at length about how it might not be enough money, but the article, the framing was really that you might not be able to spend it in time. So how do you navigate that? Because you only have, so much legislative session. It needs to go through all kinds of approvals. Are you sort of lining up shovel-ready projects? Like, how are you actually going to get that money into community?
Sure. So there is a better name for it, which is the climate impact fee or the green fee. But yes, I'm just teasing. So Jeff Michelina is leading this work group. We're calling it the Climate Fee Council. And there are 9 additional people on it. They represent the different areas of interest, which is like pure environmentalists, although Jeff is an environmentalist for sure. People who work in disaster response, that's the disaster mitigation piece. And then finally in managing tourism. And that's important too, because we want to make sure we restore parks and the shoreline and so on. So all those guys are coming together. They'll be having a lot of public meetings. We have a website where people will see how much money comes in. Remember, it doesn't start coming in until January 26, and then it'll start accumulating. They will give me recommendations also on how much we should bond out of that money. So we'll get $100 million a year, and then for every $4.5 million that we bond, we'll get an extra $100 million to do big projects. There's a lot of good that can come out of this. This is another way, to your earlier question, how I'm going to have to find extra monies if the feds cut us in certain places, like in education or, social programs or safety net. I may have to supplant some of that money, but I will now have a lot of extra money through the climate impact fee, the green fee, to work on really important structural programs in the state. They will get there. Also, their recommendation will become a bill, but no matter what, when we have these monies, we're going to be fully accountable and transparent so people can see where they're being spent. This was a game changer for us. It's the only time a state has ever done this, so it's historic. In Europe was sharing with people what we're doing because they're having all kinds of problems with too much climate impact from tourism, from over-tourism. They were very excited to see what's going on. They've begun in some places like Venice, for example, to apply a fee, a daily fee, to curtail some of the over-tourism and then have the extra money to do whatever they choose to do. So this is a winner of a program. I'm not worried about it because it's going to take some time. We are getting sued by the cruise companies, and I have respect for them. I understand that this kind of came in toward the end of the legislative session. They should pay, of course, some impact because they're having an impact when they're at port. So I think it's going to hold up. But just so everyone knows, there's a severability clause in the bill, which means that if one part of the bill were to get held up by the courts, the rest of it still goes forward. And so theirs is a very small percentage of it anyway. So this doesn't really threaten this bill or the climate impact fee. And also, it's a little bit, from my perspective, disingenuous to not work on climate change when you are bringing tens of thousands of people to our state. So it's a question of profits. It's a question of commitment. And I think that ultimately they're going to realize that our courts are probably going to take our side. This program will be emulated in other places where they're having fires, where they're having extra environmental impacts that they have no monies for. We just happen to be first in this particular case, which is not always the case. I should give a little extra credit to Palau. Palau also did something somewhat similar. I was with the president of Palau yesterday. They have a fee just for anyone who comes, like a traveler fee. We're not allowed to do it that way based on interstate commerce clauses and whatnot. So this is why we did it through just a 0.75% tax when people go and stay at Airbnbs, short-term rentals, general hotels.
I want to follow up actually on something that you had shared with us the last time you were here that we didn't really get to dive into. We were talking about the stadium, and just so that folks are aware, next week we will have Stanford Carr and Brennan Morioka on to talk about the stadium, get really in depth on what's happening there and the plans for the project beyond this, the facility itself.
Yes.
But one of the things that you had said was that you were open to possibly funding this with legalizing marijuana or gambling. So those are issues that, the legislature takes up from time to time and always gets knocked down. What is your sort of vision for that? How would you like to see that? And are these things that you support?
Okay, that's a big question. So in general, I have significant concerns overall about just legalizing gaming without a clear direction for where those monies would go to help with whatever social ills may follow. I also feel that way about legalization of marijuana. You definitely have to have resources going towards care and rehabilitation and law enforcement. Having said that, what I'd like to see is the people vote on it and we just get a definitive answer once and for all. I think we should put it on the ballot and we should allow our state to weigh in. And so the legislature simply has to pass that, and then it can go to the people. It's like a constitutional amendment, basically, saying whether or not they want legalized marijuana and whether or not they want legalized gambling, provided, and we'll put this in the question, provided that at least 20% of the monies from gaming go towards housing, and provided that at least 20% of the revenues from legalization of marijuana go towards sustaining health care programs in our state. That kind of question, and I'm open to additional input there, should be put to the voters and let them vote, because I trust the voters. I really appreciate people's input as long as they're just not angry on the internet. I think that they should weigh in on these big questions, because you're right, it can get bogged down at the legislature too easily. And I think that the legislature had already intended or were discussing putting the question of legalized marijuana on the ballot. So why not do it for gaming also? Now, having said that, I do know that Stanford has had some very good discussions with some of the investors on the mainland that do gaming. They may very well want to invest in the entertainment district, to invest in hotels, and kind of on spec that if gaming did become legal, that they would have kind of a jump start on it. That's okay by me too. I do think there are hundreds of millions of dollars of investors out there that understand that getting involved in the NACED, this entertainment district, that if they get involved in advance, they're going to benefit. It's also a enterprise zone, and I don't know if people know what that means, but an enterprise zone, I'm sure a lot of people do, allows people to invest, and provided that they keep their money in there over the course of a 10-year period, kind of just giving the the thumbnail version of this benefit, they don't pay taxes on improvements. So they could build hotels. They could get capital gains without having to pay extra taxes because they're investing in something that we need. So investing in the stadium, investing in a hotel there, investing in housing, which we want 5,000 affordable housing units ideally coming out of the district, would be great. So I've reached out to a lot of people, and Stanford's a good guy and works very hard. So he and Brendan, who I have a ton of respect for and trust implicitly, they will come up with a good plan. I still really wish the stadium would be done in 2028. I was on the football field today with Coach Chang and all the young men, and they're just so enthusiastic. I'm excited for them. They are great role models for our kids, my son included. My daughter loves watching sports and the football team and all these guys. We need a good stadium for them. And if they can, I'm still asking Stanford to do all that's possible to get us to 2028 season. But there were a lot of delays and impediments that we inherited, and it's just a big project. So it looks like, per their comments, it's more likely 2029. I will still try to help it move forward faster, and they are going to be demolishing the old stadium this year. So it's going to take several months, but I told them you better get going.
Just for my clarity on how a vote like that would work, the legislature would pass something that would allow for that question to be put to the voters. Is that 50% plus one, or how does that? What's the threshold for something like that to pass? And would you personally get involved in advocating one way or another?
Yeah, I believe it's if they vote in one session 2/3, both bodies, then it can go on to the ballot.
To the ballot, okay.
Or 50% 2 consecutive sessions. I think.
Oh no, but I meant on the voter side. Like if the public were to vote.
Oh, then
on
it's
this.
then it's
Simple majority.
It's a simple majority, but anyone who doesn't vote, it's counted as a no. So we do it not if you don't pick up a ballot at all, but if 500,000 ballots are cast and a bunch of people leave it blank, you would need 250,001 votes in favor, and then that's the will of the people. I think that that's a pretty good way to govern overall. I mean, look, you elect representatives and senators and governors to do the day-to-day work and hopefully to represent you and your values very closely based on your district and your beliefs. A lot of the work, as you can see, is tied up in what the federal government's doing. That's what we talked about a lot today. A lot of it is economic development work. You can't put that kind of thing on the ballot. That's just not practical. But you can say what you believe on the big issues. And the social issues like gay marriage could have been one of them, use of medical marijuana, definitely gaming. They're all very big questions. Now, I will say this. We have to be careful because some states have had okay experiences with legalized marijuana, but marijuana is a lot stronger than it used to be. So we have to be mindful of the health consequences. And regarding gaming, I love going to Vegas. Obviously, Ryan loves going to Vegas. He's at Vegas all the time. He's skipping our show, right? But, and I'm teasing because I love Ryan, but the truth is a lot of people go to Vegas, but they still feel that there's something special about Hawaii and that our value lies in not having to go down the road that other places, like Japan is now opening casinos. That's probably okay for them, but we have such a clear identity that is tied up in the natural wonder of this state that we have to be a little bit careful about exactly what kind of travelers come here. Again, though, I respect the people too much to not ask them what they want.
Okay. Just a few more minutes left. You just got back from dropping your daughter off. She's starting her freshman year at college on the East Coast. What was that like for you?
That was very tough. That's a lot tougher than negotiating a deal with the President of the United States on leases or deciding about vaccinations. It is much more visceral. I love that kid so much. I'm so proud of her and so happy for her, and I'm happy for everybody who gets to send their kids off to college, whether it's down the street and they leave the home or out of the state. But it was tough. I'm starting to feel it more and more. We only got back on Sunday, so we spent a week with Maya over at her college, and then we had that trade mission to Italy. I tried to use that as a buffer so that I wouldn't think about it so much. It did not work, and in spite of the fact that we were sitting there with the Pope, I was thinking about my kid at her college room. But she's doing great, and she's meeting friends, and she's got all these people from Hawaii that are there, and so it's going to be great for her. The impact for people, these are life moments, and you mark your life, I think, when your children graduate from high school, when they get engaged, sometimes when they go to college, when they get married. I mean, these are important things. So Jamie and I'll deal with it.
Yeah, and it must be such a different dynamic. I have an older daughter and a younger son, and I can't imagine what our house will be like to go from 2 kids down to 1.
Yeah, it's tough. And for us, it's a really interesting time because we've been given this opportunity to serve for 4 years as governor, and for the last year and a half, Maya will be off at college. I am going to seek re-election, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a chance to keep in this job for 4 more years. So I'm marking this time in 4-year increments. Just so happens that colleges take our kids for 4 years. I'm assuming Maya's going to have a great experience. I'm hopeful that I'll get to serve 4 more years, and then Sam will go off to college when Maya returns. So look, it's just life. It's something that I'm proud of them for. They need to grow, and the alternative, of course, is your kid doesn't do well and ends up living in your house and on your couch forever, which probably would cause much worse feelings overall.
Well, they always have a soft landing, right?
Yes.
They always have a couch to sleep on. Lastly, have you gotten your vaccinations?
I'm not due yet. I'll be due in about 6 weeks for
Okay.
me. Yeah. So I tend to go and get my vaccinations, and I will get them for both flu and COVID at the same time. And I've had pretty good health, so I'm mindful of what the recommendations from the federal government are. I reject them personally, and in my conversations with my own healthcare provider, she recommends I get the shots. I spend a lot of time around other people who are coughing on me during these kind of interviews, and so I just think it's a good thing to do. So I'm getting vaccinated. I always have gotten vaccinated, and I recommend it to people. But again, don't take it from me. Take it from your healthcare provider, and take it from your heart. But in my opinion, as a physician governor, it's a really good idea because you're not just protecting yourself, which is good. You're protecting your next door neighbor, and you're protecting your parents and your grandparents. And that might even be a better reason to get vaccinated, because we all can, agree that we will suffer the consequences of our own actions, but why should other people if we don't take responsibility for our health? So please do it for the people that are around you. And if people want to see me getting pictures of my shots, I will do it, because it's going to be up here. It's not on my bum.
I have a feeling that we will be getting that press release. Thank you so much, Governor, for being here. Stay with us. You're watching Spotlight Now.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live. We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahia.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
First alert traffic is like always having a helpful passenger right next to you.
There's a crash up ahead in the left lane.
When we see a backup, we'll tell you live on TV
That doesn't look too good.
and send an alert to your phone.
I'll type, you drive.
First alert traffic on TV, streaming, and on the Hawaii News Now app.
Keeping you and your ohana safe.